I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching Daybreak live on A News. Here are today's top stories. Russian strike on passenger train in northeastern Ukraine kills 5 people. Trump says he's going to de-escalate in Minnesota after shooting backlash. And US announces military drills in the Middle East amid Iran tensions. First this morning, Ukraine says Russian drone attacks have intensified, killing at least 8 civilians in the Ukraine northeastern region. The information states that 5 people were killed when a passenger train was hit in the northeast, while 3 others died in the overnight attacks on the southern city of Odessa. The escalation comes as diplomatic efforts to end the war continues.
Ukraine says Russian attacks have intensified after a drone strike hit a civilian passenger train in the country's northeast overnight on Tuesday, killing at least 5 people. Prosecutors say the train was struck in the Kharkiv region as it traveled from western Ukraine toward Barvinkov. One drone hit the train directly while 2 others struck nearby, setting several carriages on fire. President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the attack as terrorism, saying there was no military justification for targeting a civilian train. He said more than 200 passengers were on board and urged Ukraine's partners to increase pressure on Moscow. The strike came just hours after another Russian drone attack on the southern port city of Odessa earlier the same night. Officials say at least 3 people were killed and 25 wounded as drones hit residential areas and energy facilities. Several buildings were badly damaged and rescue efforts are still underway. Ukraine's Air Force says Russia launched around 165 drones overnight, most of them intercepted, though power outages were reported in several regions, including Kharkiv and Odessa. Moscow hasn't commented on the latest attacks. The escalation comes as diplomatic efforts continue. Ukrainian, Russian and US officials held talks in Abu Dhabi last weekend, and another round of discussions is expected on Sunday.
Now let's take a closer look at the stories shaping the day across the globe, and we look first to that on the website and the news, which is Zelensky condemns Russian drone strike on civilian train on our A News website. So it leads on from the first story that we just ran, and the information there was that the Russian drone strike on a passenger train in northeastern Ukraine killed 5 people. Zelensky is basically saying there is not and cannot be any military justification for killing civilians in a train carriage. He added that the strikes undermined peace efforts and urged allies to step up pressure on Moscow to end the war. So Russia has intensified attacks on energy infrastructure as well, which we know of, leaving many Ukrainians without power in freezing temperatures. And if we also go to the next website, which is Deutsche Welle, on there we can see their top headline, which states that Zelensky condemns terrorism after Russia hits train. And it's just basically about the same incident that happened, and Russia condemning the attack, calling it a terrorist attack, and that more needs to be done in order to end the ongoing war in Ukraine. Okay, now the next story. We go to the Wall Street Journal, and on there they are leading with 48 hours that convinced Trump to change course in Minnesota. So for the past 2 days, we have been covering this particular story, and that story basically happened on Saturday local time in the morning when a US civilian was shot by immigration officers after they found a gun. He was holding onto a gun, which he did not use, which video footage later found. He was shot, however, he was described described as a domestic terrorist. Later on, more information came out as to what the actual scene was carried out and what happened there. Now, we know that President Trump has actually spoken to Fox News recently and has said that he is going to de-escalate a little bit, is actually what he said. He said both shootings there were terrible because it wasn't just Alex Pretty, who was the intensive care nurse, but also another woman by Good. Her last name's Good as well. So there was two people in that same area. So Renee Good was also shot earlier this month. So that's two shootings in the same city. So Trump is now saying that things are going to change ever so slightly. US Border Patrol Commander Greg Bombino, who has been the face of immigration enforcement there, has also left, as well as a number of federal agents. So they are moving out. However, there is a White House border czar, Tom Homan, who will now lead the crackdown in that particular area. There's now calls for the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, to actually resign after she labelled Alex Pretty as a domestic terrorist, that people, Republicans, Democrats, are calling for her resignation because of the words that she used about him and the killing that happened. So as I mentioned, it follows the shooting death of Renee Good, another US citizen, as well as Alex Pretty, who was shot on the Saturday. Earlier, Trump did say that he has confidence in Kristi Noem's abilities, telling reporters that she has done a very good job. Right now, we're going to go to our next story, which is on the BBC, and that's leading with Spain. And Spain plans to give 500,000 undocumented migrants legal status. So this happened on Tuesday, late Tuesday, I believe. Basically, the information that we get is the Spanish government has announced a plan to legalize status for undocumented migrants, which will benefit 500,000 people. It will be available to foreign nationals who have not got a criminal record and can prove that they lived in Spain for at least 5 months prior to December last year. This is a major breakthrough for many migrants who have travelled over there, the majority of whom have come from Latin America. And information actually tells us that those particular countries were Colombia, Peru and Honduras. So a number of migrants actually are now living in Spain, trying to work there and also seek legal status. Spain's Socialist Coalition government has said that this issue is actually helping to underline the importance of migrants to the economy. And it's the first large-scale migrant regularization in Spain for 2 decades. So we'll definitely bring you up to date with any further progress happening there. We now turn to our next story, which is leading on Reuters, and that brings us to this particular headline: Nigeria rescues 11 kidnapped victims in late night operation. So just to state that Nigeria has had a number of kidnappings that has happened in the area, and this one happened a much while ago. It wasn't the Christmas ones, but it was one that took place. And Nigeria Army said on Tuesday it rescued 11 kidnapping victims during a late night operation in the Kaduna-Abuja highway. 5 men, 3 women and 3 children had been held for 92 days after being abducted in October in the Gada Maman Community Centre, which you would have just seen the video. There we are. It's just showing exactly what happened, the kidnappings and the books and the shoes and things that were left there. So kidnappings for ransom have become a major security challenge for northwestern and central Nigeria, including this particular area as well. Nigeria's security situation is also under scrutiny because the US President Donald Trump launched a Christmas Day airstrike over what he says is persecution of Christians in this particular area. So Nigeria's government is definitely ramping up its security efforts and trying to make sure it gets kidnapped victims back home safely and to their families. Last week, armed bandits kidnapped more than 160 worshippers from 2 churches in Kaduna. So we know that as much as the government is trying to get a grip on this, more kidnappings are happening, and unfortunately it is terrorizing families in those particular areas as well. Well, those were all of the latest headlines. That's the press roundup for now. We're going to take a short break, but when I return, we'll take a closer look at the global stories. Stay with us. Welcome back to Daybreak. Now let's take a look at the global stories. And first we head over to the UK, and Britain is testing a new balance in its foreign policy as Prime Minister Keir Starmer prepares for talks in China against the backdrop of worsening US-China relations. Our correspondent has more from Manchester.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is set to travel to China this week in a high-stakes visit aimed at sowing relations with Beijing and boosting Britain's economy at a time of strained ties with the United States. It will be the first visit by a UK leader to China since 2018. The trip comes as China moves ahead with plans for a new expanded embassy in London, a project that has sparked political and security concerns in the UK. Starmer's 4-day visit begins on Wednesday, during which he is due to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping, Premier Li Jian, and the country's top legislator, Zhou Leji. The Prime Minister will be accompanied by Business Secretary Peter Kyle and a delegation of more than 50 British companies and institutions from sectors including finance, healthcare, and manufacturing. Downing Street hopes the visit will unlock new Chinese investment and widen access to the world's second-largest economy for UK industries such as financial services, car manufacturing, and Scotch whisky. China's Commerce Ministry says trade and investment documents are expected to be signed during the visit, adding Beijing is willing to strengthen communication to create what it called a fair, transparent, and rules-based business environment. China's foreign ministry has also struck a welcoming tone, saying Beijing is ready to enhance mutual trust and deepen practical cooperation with Britain, a member of the Group of Seven. But the trip carries political risks. Starmer faces pressure from China hawks at home, who warn closer ties could undermine national security and values. There is also the risk of tension with Washington. US President Donald Trump has been ramping up tariffs and criticism of America's closest allies, and any UK move to deepen economic engagement with China could prompt a sharp response. Analysts say Starmer is walking a diplomatic tightrope. China is no longer just a world's factory, but an increasingly important consumer market, one Britain cannot easily ignore as it searches for growth. For Starmer, the visit is a test of economic pragmatism and of how far Britain can rebalance its China policy without straining relations with its closest security ally. Dina Farizadeh, A-News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
The Spanish government has announced that it will legalise the status of undocumented migrants, a measure expected to benefit at least 500,000 people. Regulation will be available to foreign nationals who do not have a criminal record and can prove they lived in Spain for at least 5 months prior to the 31st of December 2025. Spain's Minister for Inclusion, Social Security and Migration has said that it is an historic day for the country. The European country has seen a large influx of migrants in recent years, mainly from Latin America. US President Donald Trump says his administration will de-escalate a little bit in Minnesota following 2 fatal shootings by federal immigration agents that sparked protests and national criticism. Here's more.
President Donald Trump said Tuesday that his administration will scale back operations in Minnesota following 2 fatal shootings by federal immigration officers. In a Fox News interview, Trump described the incidents as regrettable, calling them terrible, and suggesting the victims should not have been carrying firearms. He noted that the operation had removed thousands of criminals from the state, but acknowledged the need to reduce tensions.
We're going to de-escalate a little bit, but I will tell you, you look at the numbers, they're doing better than they've done in many years. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him, and it's pretty unusual. But nobody knows when they saw the gun, how they saw the gun, everything else. Bottom line, it was terrible. Both of them were terrible. The other was terrible, too. And I'm not sure about his parents, but I know her parents were big Trump fans. Makes me feel bad anyway, but I mean, I guess you could say even worse. They were.
The White House has reassigned Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino, replacing him with the administration's border czar, Tom Homan, who has met with local officials, including Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey, in a show of détente. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem defended the agents' actions, while local authorities and eyewitnesses have challenged official accounts of the shootings. Lawmakers from both parties have called for investigations into the deaths, and a federal judge has blocked the Department of Homeland Security from destroying or altering evidence.
Staying on President Donald Trump, he says the United States will work out a solution with South Korea after announcing plans to raise tariffs on its imports to 25%. Trump said the move is linked to delays in South Korea's parliament approving an investment deal agreed last year. The announcement caught officials by surprise, with lawmakers expected to revisit the issue in February.
So we'll work something out. We'll work something out with South Korea. Mr. President.
Now, campaigning for Japan's 8th February snap general election has officially kicked off on Tuesday, and all 465 seats in the House of Representatives are up for grabs. Major political parties have held rallies across the country. Of the 465 lower house seats, 289 will be elected from single-member districts, while 176 will be decided through proportional representation across 11 regional blocks. National broadcaster NHK predicts that the campaign will see heated debates over the Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's government handling of inflation, as well as its foreign and security policies. We're going to take a quick break now. When I return, I'll discuss the key regional headlines with an in-studio guest to help us unpack more. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back. Now let's take you through the news of what's happening across the region. And first we head over to the Middle East, and the United States is stepping up its military presence in the area, announcing new exercises as tensions with Iran continue to rise. Washington says the move is aimed at deterrence, while some regional allies are urging caution. Here's more.
The United States has announced new multi-day military exercises in the Middle East as it deploys a major naval force to the region amid escalating tensions with Iran. US Central Command says the drills are intended to demonstrate Washington's ability to project air power across the region. No details on the timing or location have been released. The announcement comes as CENTCOM confirms the arrival of a US carrier strike group led by the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. The United States has also moved F-15E fighter jets to the region, while the United Kingdom has deployed Typhoon aircraft in what it describes as a defensive role. US President Donald Trump said Washington has positioned a large armada near Iran as a deterrent, while stressing that the United States remains open to dialogue.
And by the way, there's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
US officials say the carrier deployment reflects a defensive posture aimed at deterrence and regional stability. Iranian leaders have condemned the carrier's presence as destabilizing, with state media stressing national sovereignty and defensive preparedness. The military build-up follows months of unrest in Iran linked to economic pressure and mass protests. Human rights groups estimate thousands have been killed, though exact figures remain difficult to verify due to censorship and internet restrictions. Some US allies have voiced concern, with the United Arab Emirates saying it will not allow its territory or airspace to be used for any attack on Iran, stressing neutrality and regional stability.
Staying on Iran, nearly 5 decades of comprehensive US sanctions have caused severe economic challenges to the country's major industries and its citizens, driving up the costs of production and living expenses. Here's this report.
US sanctions have intensified under Washington's so-called maximum pressure campaign, targeting Iran's foreign trade, particularly petrochemical exports. The effort began during Donald Trump's first term and has accelerated since his return to office last year.
Of course, I am more interested in calling what is happening unilateral coercive measures, of which sanctions are one of its branches. In relation to many countries, they are actually using other models, such as the tariff war.
The sanctions now hit Iran's energy, shipping, and financial sectors, with negative effects across society. Protests to rising prices and currency decline last December ignited unrest, which led to death and wounding of thousands of people. Inflation about 50% and a steep currency decline of 90% have pushed up prices and weakened purchasing power. On the factory floor, the United States maximum pressure is tangible. Manufacturers describe facing a constant battle against isolation and rising costs.
The US sanctions, which started a few years ago and have now intensified, have caused us to face many problems in the field of technology transfer and trade with foreign and international companies. These sanctions have severely affected Iran's industries, driving up production costs and leading to higher overall prices.
US sanctions on Iran date back to the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Nearly 5 decades later, those sanctions remain in force. What began with frozen Iranian assets in US banks has since expanded, tied to disputes over Tehran's regional policy, nuclear program, and ballistic missile development. United States is demanding a zero enrichment policy and limiting the range of Iran's missiles to about 500 kilometers. With Iran declaring US conditions as it redlines, there are no promising prospects on easing of US sanctions, let alone removing them in a predictable future. Turad Shiralilu, Tehran, 4A News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to hold talks with Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa in Moscow today. This marks al-Sharaa's second visit to the Russian capital following his previous trip in October. The upcoming talks are expected to continue discussions on bilateral relations, defense, cooperation, and the ongoing restructuring of the Syrian state, further solidifying the long-standing partnership between the two countries. The future of the Northern Aral Sea is back on the agenda in Kazakhstan. In Astana, officials from the Kazakh government and the World Bank have discussed how joint projects aimed at restoring the sea will move forward as the region continues to face the long-term consequences of one of Central Asia's most severe environmental crises. Here's this report.
Kazakhstan's Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation Nurjan Nurjigitov met with the World Bank's permanent representative in Kazakhstan, Andrei Mikhnov, to discuss the implementation of joint restoration projects. The focus was on the Northern Aral Sea Preservation Project. It includes the reconstruction of the Kokaral Dam, which is expected to help raise water levels. Project documentation is now close to completion. For Kazakhstan, the Northern Aral is no longer just an environmental issue. It affects people's livelihoods, employment in the region, agricultural sustainability, and the overall state of local ecosystems. In this context, the World Bank's involvement is seen as a logical continuation of ongoing efforts. The first phase of the project has already delivered tangible results. According to the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, water levels in the Northern Aral Sea have increased by 42%, while annual fish catches have reached 8,000 tons. The next goal is set for the coming 5 years. Kazakhstan, together with Uzbekistan, plans to increase the volume of water in the Northern Aral Sea to 34 cubic kilometers. Authorities say the two sides have agreed on a stable inflow of water, including during low water periods. And despite these efforts, the drying up of the Aral Sea remains the largest environmental disaster in Central Asia. Since the 1960s, its surface area has shrunk almost ninefold, water levels have fallen threefold, and water volume has decreased by about 15 times. Each year, around 100 million tons of salty dust rise from the dried seabed and spread across the region. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Azerbaijan is taking concrete steps to ensure high-quality internet across its hotels and tourism venues, setting a new standard for connectivity in the region. Officials say the initiative, supported by regular audits and certification, will strengthen the country's appeal to both business and travellers while boosting confidence in its digital infrastructure. A News' Aysel Ibrahimova has more.
Today is about how Azerbaijan welcomes the world, connected and future-ready. This moment sets a new standard for digital experience in hospitality, making every stay smoother, faster, and truly world-class for its guests.
High-speed internet is now shaping Azerbaijan's ambition to become a trusted global tourism and events destination, as officials and industry leaders move to certify and upgrade connectivity in hotels and venues. The issue was discussed at the Strategic Executive Summit in Baku, hosted by Ookla together with the Information Communication Technologies Agency, the Azerbaijan Tourism Board and the Azerbaijan Hotel Association. Organisers say the initiative is important, as fast, secure connectivity has become a key factor in choosing hotels, planning trips and event tourism. According to the data shared at the event, across the wider Middle East, many luxury hotels still fall below guest expectations for Wi-Fi speed and security. By contrast, Azerbaijan's rapid fibre rollout, which expanded access from around 9% to nearly full coverage in 5 years under the Online Azerbaijan project, lays a strong foundation for high-quality digital services and connectivity.
If you look at the performance in the country, it has definitely increased dramatically over the last 5 years with the initiative of Azerbaijan Online. And so while the fibre connectivity is great and the speeds are very, very strong in the country, often a customer's experience is limited by the Wi-Fi. And I think there's definitely an opportunity to improve the performance that customers get with enhancements that can be made to the Wi-Fi within the building and within hotels.
With this step, Azerbaijan becomes the first country to pilot a new speed test certified approach, designed to deliver a world-class digital experience while generating clear economic and strategic benefits.
In line with the outcomes of this event, over the coming years, we will sign and implement a concrete action plan in cooperation with both government bodies and international organizations to improve the quality of internet services in accommodation facilities across Azerbaijan. The country has recently hosted a number of major international events, and visitors place great importance on the quality of internet services. We will continue to work with the industry from a digitalization perspective to establish Azerbaijan as a trusted destination for event tourism in the future.
The first steps will naturally involve establishing a clear standard. This standard is expected to be developed jointly by both our side and the hotels, creating a common benchmark. Following this, the standard will be implemented and audited in the tourism sector by Ookla. Once the audit is completed, hotels or other venues that meet the criteria will be able to receive the certification, and periodic audits will follow to ensure that the certification is maintained over time.
Participants concluded that improving in-building Wi-Fi and introducing certification with regular audits will strengthen tourist confidence, support business travel, and help position Azerbaijan as a dependable host for international conferences, global events, and long-stay visitors, ultimately contributing to economic growth.
Azerbaijan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ceyhun Bamramov, is visiting China as part of official diplomatic engagements. Baramovs will meet Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi later today. The visit comes at a time when Euro-Asian connectivity, trade, diversification and strategic dialogue are moving to the forefront of the regional diplomacy, with Azerbaijan playing an increasingly visible and constructive role. Staying on this subject and to delve into this further, I'm now joined by Nurbalat Nishimbayev, a professor at Turan University in Kazakhstan. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. So let's get straight to it. And my first question really is, how should we understand the current phase of Azerbaijan and China relations? And does the visit signal a new alignment with Azerbaijan's broader vision of connectivity and regional partnership?
Definitely, I would say we have witnessed lots of changes over the last 5 years since the quarantine. Now we see China is opening up towards the west, in particular with the railroads. So in this case, with the initiative of the Chinese logistical projects, the Central Asia and the China is becoming very important in Eurasian land hub, because if we look at the map, without Azerbaijan and the Chinese relations, the goods from the east to the west will not move freely. So therefore, strategically, Azerbaijan as a South Caucasus nation and the China is very important, providing secure and transparent logistical hub from the China to the Europe. So therefore, I think Azerbaijan eastern step towards the China, it's very important step within the geopolitical changes in this transformative era.
And then with that then, Azerbaijan has established itself as a key hub linking China, Central Asia with Turkey and European markets. What new momentum might this visit bring to the Middle Corridor?
Actually, the visit's so-called Minister of Foreign Affairs, it will take the main steps which is implemented, founded by the meetings of the head of the states. So therefore, if we look back, last year we have seen the meetings between the presidents of Azerbaijan and China, as well as Central Asian nations. So those momentums, those visits, I think it will create concrete step, all the technical detailed aspects. It will move from the word to the real steps. So therefore, Azerbaijan and China historically as a new configuration of the old so-called Silk Road, because again, the latest geopolitical changes in Russia, Ukraine, also in Middle East, we have seen the international trade route is now interrupting, and therefore China sending the goods, exporting to the Europe by the sea land is becoming problematic. So therefore, by sending by Central Asia toward Caspian Sea and Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, and Europe, that's one of the efficient, one of the trustworthy roads for Chinese exports. So definitely, I would assess these relations realistic, basic, pragmatic steps, which creates win-win situation for all the parts.
And just on that win-win situation then for both parties, China is obviously wanting to expand its economic policy, especially its foreign policy. Why is that important that the Silk Road is part of that for them?
Well, we shouldn't separate the geopolitical projects from the politics. All they are part of the greater vision, greater strategies. So China's vision is pretty, at some point overlaps, at some point different from the Western projects, because they see from their own philosophy how the world should be run, should create it. For them, the links, the trade routes, one of the strategic pillars of their foreign policy, I would say. So therefore, the latest changes under their visions, which is declared with Belt and Road Initiative back 2013 at Nazarbayev University in Astana. So this project set up Chinese role linking China with Europe in modern way. So in the last more than 10 years, we have seen lots of infrastructures setting up using innovative technologies from AIs to the digital controlling system, but still on the process. So therefore, all these steps towards the technological advancement, infrastructure and logistical aspects is creating some foundation for the long term, the future of the movements of goods, movements of raw materials. Also now we see the high interest for the rare earth material minerals. So all the aspects needs a strong and efficient, very modern logistical aspect, logistical hub. So in this matter, it's very important for both sides.
Yes, no, definitely. Let's just turn our attention now to Azerbaijan and Central Asia, and in particular, which have reached a new level in recent years based on their shared interest in transport, energy, and regional stability. But China's interest across Central Asia adds another level to this as well. How might that add a different dimension to their relationship in regards to Central Asia, Azerbaijan, China, kind of all coming together?
Well, definitely last year, technically in November, in Uzbekistan, we have witnessed C5 plus Azerbaijan. It became turned from the C5 into C6. So therefore, when we talk about Azerbaijan and Central Asia, there are way more values uniting them rather than separating, starting with common dignity and identities and the history, etc., etc. But now we see even more new values integrating those nations. But when it comes to China, of course, those China, Central Asia, and the Azerbaijan, South Caucasus nations are uniting under the common logistical geographical position at the same time with other values too. For example, from the higher education, from the research, culture, many others, as well as we see economic sector will be one of the pivotal foundation of those relations. So Central Asia and Azerbaijan, in Central Asian expert community also, Azerbaijan considers now one of the wider very gate to the Europe for the Central. Because if you again look at the map, Central Asian nations are landlocked nation. For them, it's very important to get access to the sea roads. So in this regard, in the Western position, now Azerbaijan, South Caucasus is offering one of the trustworthy, one of the efficient gate to the global market. So in this matter, for Azerbaijan, Central Asia, the same thing is a door next to the China. Also one of the efficient, trustworthy, and safer trade routes getting to China and returning goods to China to Europe.
No, okay, that's great. And do you see then that Azerbaijan serves as a bridge between Central Asia and China as well as Europe? How does that make Azerbaijan and its neighbors more resilient in this economic space?
Exactly. Azerbaijan over the last couple of years have made a lot of changes, making this region more stable, permanent, becoming a bridge between Europe on the other side, Central Asia. So in this regard, Azerbaijan is one of the leading nations in South Caucasus, is, I think, positioning itself in a new way as a middle power, I would say, middle power with a nation not on periphery, but trying to be on the center, bringing both nations, becoming a hub, exporting them. So in this regard, geopolitics in this matter, geography plays an important role in all the other spheres. But when we see common vision on the state leadership level, that's even more interesting, how this in challenging system, all those post-Soviet, also now modern Turkic nations finding this place in it, also doing common projects. Because in Kazakhstan, in Central Asia, also we have seen lots of changes in the last couple of decades. But now we see all these changes are creating a new foundation for the next century probably.
And just very quickly, if I can just get this question in before they tell me my time is up, Mr. Nishanbayev, does the visit then reinforces China, does the visit to China reinforce Azerbaijan's strategic vision of cooperation without confrontation and its wider foreign policy, do you think?
Yes, because China, Azerbaijan, they are pretty pragmatic in this field. They are working on it. They have common vision on certain spaces, but I don't see any values which disintegrates them. There are more things to unite them. They have common vision on many aspects of life. So therefore, it's both sides strategically important to remove all the barriers and to create concrete steps for the common projects, because more projects coming on between the nations.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot that will come out of the meeting with both these foreign ministers later today and throughout this week. So I'm sure we'll have you back on the programme. So thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you so much.
Thank you. Great, we're now going to head to a short break. When I come back, I'll have a full update on the latest headlines, as well as a closer look at the front pages coming up this morning. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani, live on A News. Here are your top stories. Russian strike on passenger train in northeastern Ukraine kills 5 people. Trump says he's going to de-escalate in Minnesota after shooting backlash. And US announces military drills in the Middle East amid Iran tensions. I'm now going to take you through the stories that are shaping the day across the globe. And we first head to the Guardian website, where it states that Ukraine war briefing, nearly 2 million military casualties to date. Study finds with Russia bearing brunt of losses. So actually on the Guardian is an explainer of how everything has been going in the past couple of weeks, because there's been a number of forceful attacks in the area. We know that there was a Russian drone strike on a passenger train that happened and killed 5 people. Which is the latest figures that we have. I'm sure that may also grow as it was carrying over around 200 passengers at the time. Zelensky has spoken up about this, and he says that he's condemned the attack, calling it terrorism, and says there is not and cannot be any military justification for killing civilians in a train. He put that on social media. He also added that strikes undermine peace efforts and urged allies to step up pressure on Moscow to end the war. So if you just see here, it's stating all the different points that's been happening in regards to the Russia and Ukraine war, as well as that stating how many people have been killed, unfortunately, and the targeting of their infrastructure, especially during one of the coldest seasons that Ukraine is going through. So the Guardian website is actually listing and providing more of an explainer into what has been going on over the past couple of weeks, or even since last year. As it states here, Zelensky told NBC in February 2025 that his country had lost nearly 46,000 troops since 2022. So it's a story we will be covering, and hopefully with upcoming talks heading back to Abu Dhabi on Sunday might show a bit of a better breakthrough. Now we will head over to our next story, which is on Le Monde, and that is in reference to the US. And in Minneapolis, Trump tries to put out the fire started by his administration. It follows the shooting of an American citizen. He was actually in ICU intensive care nurse. His name is Alex Pretty, and we had Renee Good, who was also shot dead, unfortunately, in the same city. Now that came on, Alex Pretty's death was on Saturday local time around 9 o'clock, which brought a number of criticism from both the Republicans and the Democrats. There's been calls for the federal agents, the immigration federal agents, to actually leave the state, and which Trump has agreed to do so, but has said that the White House border czar, Tom Homan, will now lead the crackdown and will come into Minneapolis to sort all of that out. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who defended federal agents and actually called Pretty a domestic terrorist, has been called for her to resign, for her to actually lose her job, and there's calls for her to testify before Congress in March over the handling of the case. So there's a number of information that is coming out. I'm sure we will continue to cover the story, but Trump has said that and has actually supported Kristi Noem, telling reporters on his Fox News interview most recently, telling reporters as well that she has done a very good job. So that is leading on Le Monde. We stay with the same newspaper, but we go to a different story, and we go to India and the EU. And they've now created a common market to counter Trump. So this is a trade deal that was confirmed on Tuesday that will slash tariffs on most goods. The deal aims to reduce reliance on the United States, and the deal is expected to double EU exports to India as well. The EU will cut tariffs by 99.5% of goods imported from India over the next 7 years, with tariffs cut to zero on Indian marine goods, leather, textile products, chemicals, rubber, base metals, and gems and jewelry. It was said that the agreement will bring major opportunities to 1.4 billion people of India and millions of people in Europe as well. As you can see here, that's Ursula von der Leyen and President Narendra Modi there in regards to the deal. And the 2-decade-long EU-India trade talks gained momentum after Washington imposed a 50% tariff on some of the Indian goods there, which also had a major impact on the market. And in Davos last week, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney gave a speech there and basically said that middle power should avoid becoming victims and should make sure they have trade deals with other countries. And he's also planning to visit India to sign deals on uranium, energy and materials as well. Well, those were the main stories that are breaking this morning. We're now going to head over to our first story, which is on Ukraine, which I mentioned previously before. And Ukraine says Russian drone attacks have intensified. 5 people were killed when a passenger train was hit in the northeast, while 3 others died in overnight attacks on the southern city of Odessa. The escalation comes as diplomatic efforts to end the war continue. Here's this report.
Ukraine says Russian attacks have intensified after a drone strike hit a civilian passenger train in the country's northeast overnight on Tuesday, killing at least 5 people. Prosecutors say the train was struck in the Kharkiv region as it travelled from western Ukraine toward Barvinkov. One drone hit the train directly, while 2 others struck nearby, setting several carriages on fire. President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the attack as terrorism, saying there was no military justification for targeting a civilian train. He said more than 200 passengers were on board and urged Ukraine's partners to increase pressure on Moscow. The strike came just hours after another Russian drone attack on the southern port city of Odessa earlier the same night. Officials say at least 3 people were killed and 25 wounded as drones hit residential areas and energy facilities. Several buildings were badly damaged and rescue efforts are still underway. Ukraine's Air Force says Russia launched around 165 drones overnight, most of them intercepted, though power outages were reported in several regions, including Kharkiv and Odessa. Moscow hasn't commented on the latest attacks. The escalation comes as diplomatic efforts continue. Ukrainian, Russian and US officials held talks in Abu Dhabi last weekend, and another round of discussions is expected on Sunday.
Heading over to the UK now, and Britain is testing a new balance in its foreign policy as Prime Minister Keir Starmer prepares for talks in China against the backdrop of worsening US-China relations. Our correspondent has more from Manchester.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is set to travel to China this week in a high-stakes visit aimed at sowing relations with Beijing and boosting Britain's economy at a time of strained ties with the United States. It will be the first visit by a UK leader to China since 2018. The trip comes as China moves ahead with plans for a new expanded embassy in London, a project that has sparked political and security concerns in the UK. Starmer's 4-day visit begins on Wednesday, during which he is due to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping, Premier Li Jian, and the country's top legislator Zhou Leji. The Prime Minister will be accompanied by Business Secretary Peter Kyle and a delegation of more than 50 British companies and institutions from sectors including finance, healthcare, and manufacturing. Downing Street hopes the visit will unlock new Chinese investment and widen access to the world's second-largest economy for UK industries such as financial services, car manufacturing, and Scotch whisky. China's Commerce Ministry says trade and investment documents are expected to be signed during the visit, adding Beijing is willing to strengthen communication to create what it called a fair, transparent, and rules-based business environment. China's foreign ministry has also struck a welcoming tone, saying Beijing is ready to enhance mutual trust and deepen practical cooperation with Britain, a member of the Group of Seven. But the trip carries political risks. Starmer faces pressure from China hawks at home, who warn closer ties could undermine national security and values. There is also the risk of tension with Washington. US President Donald Trump has been ramping up tariffs and criticism of America's closest allies, and any UK move to deepen economic engagement with China could prompt a sharp response. Analysts say Starmer is walking a diplomatic tightrope. China is no longer just a rules factory, but an increasingly important consumer market, one Britain cannot easily ignore as it searches for growth. For Starmer, the visit is a test of economic pragmatism and of how far Britain can rebalance its China policy without straining relations with its closest security ally. Dina Farzadeh, A-News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
The Spanish government has announced that it will legalize the status of undocumented migrants, a measure expected to benefit at least 500,000 people. Regulation will be available to foreign nationals who do not have a criminal record and can prove they lived in Spain for at least 5 months prior to the 31st of December 2025. Spain's Minister for Inclusion, Social Security and Migration has said that it is an historic day for the country. The European country has seen a large influx of migrants in recent years, mainly from Latin America. US President Donald Trump says his administration will de-escalate a little bit in Minnesota following 2 fatal shootings by federal immigration agents that sparked protests and national criticism. Here's more on the story.
President Donald Trump said Tuesday that his administration will scale back operations in Minnesota following 2 fatal shootings by federal immigration officers. In a Fox News interview, Trump described the incidents as regrettable, calling them terrible, and suggesting the victims should not have been carrying firearms. He noted that the operation had removed thousands of criminals from the state, but acknowledged the need to reduce tensions.
We're going to de-escalate a little bit, but I will tell you, you look at the numbers, they're doing better than they've done in many years. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded, and he had 2 magazines with him, and it's pretty unusual. But nobody knows when they saw the gun, how they saw the gun, everything else. Bottom line, it was terrible. Both of them were terrible. The other was terrible, too. And I'm not sure about his parents, but I know her parents were big Trump fans. Makes me feel bad anyway, but, I mean, I guess you could say even worse. They were...
The White House has reassigned Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino, replacing him with the administration's border czar, Tom Homan, who has met with local officials, including Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey, in a show of détente. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem defended the agent's actions, while local authorities and eyewitnesses have challenged official accounts of the shootings. Lawmakers from both parties have called for investigations into the deaths, and a federal judge has blocked the Department of Homeland Security from destroying or altering evidence.
Now turning to campaigning in Japan, which is for the 8th of February snap general election. It kicked off on Tuesday, and all 465 seats in the House of Representatives is up for grabs. Major political parties have held rallies across the country. Of the 465 lower house seats, 289 will be elected from single-member districts, while 176 will be decided through proportional representation across 11 regional blocks. National broadcaster NHK predicts the campaign will see heated debates over the Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's government's handling of inflation, as well as its foreign and security policies. Here to discuss this and the upcoming elections next month is Professor Shijiro Takeshita, Professor of University of Shugo in Japan. Welcome and thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me.
My first question is, what are Takaichi's reasons for calling a snap election, especially now that we've seen her popularity is slightly dipping in the polls?
No, I don't think it's really dipping. I think dip would be too strong. I mean, she has over 70% support, which is something that I haven't seen in decades, to say the least. And she has approximately 75 to 80% approval amongst the younger generation of ages to 18 to 39. So she has a very strong stance here. And I think what she's trying to do is utilizing her popularity into getting the single majority by the LDP, her party, because LDP's acknowledgement, or I should say support level by the Japanese public, is only 37%. So they need to beef this up in order to get a single majority. And this is very important considering that we have tons of legislation that will be coming through that is very difficult to pass through, such as taxation issues, security measures because of threat from China, etc., etc. And if the government has to basically, create a coalition in every one of these legislation, it would be extremely time consuming. So obviously, I think she wants to target a much more secure positioning in creating these legislations.
Okay, so using her popularity to help her push through her policies, do you think that will work now in order to obviously lift her party to make sure they have a majority in the seats that are up for grabs?
Well, the reason why the Japanese public is really supporting her is because she is on the right track. She's very clear. Yes, there is a worry, as you just reported, about the inflation, especially considering the fact that she's going for expansive policy and utilizing 20 trillion yen in investment. So obviously, many people are thinking that now we won't have discipline in our financial side. The yen will weaken further, and that will really hurt our inflationary condition even more. This is one big worry. But one has to take a stance, and she is taking that very clear stance of reviving the economy first, which I think is a right methodology, especially when you look at the mistakes that European Central Bank have made during their coping with the crisis of Southern European nations. So, I think she's at least clear in what she's trying to do, and she's making it clear for the Japanese public, which is quite different from, well, I would say halfway wishy-washy type of, policy that were given out in the previous, administration.
Okay, well, she's definitely being a popular voice amongst Japanese citizens. What can you tell us about the economic policy that she is trying to push through then, and will it help everyday Japanese citizens in their living costs, in the yen, everything in relation to that?
That's a good and tough question, especially the latter one, because, well, I think it will take time. We're very vulnerable. Japan is very vulnerable, unlike Azerbaijan. We don't have any natural resource. And for that reason, we're very vulnerable to imported prices. And for that reason, the yen to weaken on back of her policy would be, hurting them. Now, I already know that, central banks have basically talking to each other to intervene if we have excessive, move on the foreign currency side. But this is one of the biggest headache that they've got. I think, the 20 trillion expansion policy is just right. It's not, flashing money to people's face, which you don't have a multiplier to the economy, or it's not too big. It's just the right amount, I think. So, from that perspective, it would be nice if the Japanese public this time have a little more patience and in basically looking at, how the policy actually starts working out. Because as you know, we've always had revolving doors of, prime ministers, and that really does not help to create a transitional transformation in Japan.
Definitely. And Takaishi, as you mentioned, she's taking quite a calculated risk by holding these snap elections, which is not too far away in regards to the 8th of February. Do you think that will help to push her fiscal plan forward? And if so, what can you establish will happen in the next coming year or months?
Well, basically, one of the biggest problem is that we won't be able to establish, the this fiscal year's budget because we just won't have enough time. We have a new fiscal year starting in April, so that would be a problem. We would have to probably create some intermediary budget and all these kind of problems, which we didn't need if we didn't have an election. But that said, I think that, again, as I said, it would clarify the path going forward. One of the measures I think she will conduct is, of course, the economic side, but also security side, basically trying to cope with the threat that we are getting very severely from China, and to create, for example, espionage law and these kind of security measures to strengthen our ties on the free world side. Those kind of measures, both the economic and security measures, are the two major ones, along with anti-inflation measures, which is, again, top agenda in the economic side that she's trying to target right now.
Well, you just mentioned China just there, and it's something that I want to pinpoint because I cannot let you go without talking about it. China and Japanese relations, which has taken quite a severe dip since the end of last year. What can Takaichi do to resolve this? We can see that it's actually impacted the economy in some way. So what can be done to resolve that?
Silence, time. China will not back down. It's their typical methodology. Basically, they will not admit the fact that they have been wrong, or there was nothing wrong about what our prime minister basically said. Going for survival, threatening armed attack. When our neighbor and our friend, our brothers are being attacked, it's a natural thing to do. So there's nothing wrong or strange about what she said, but China will basically make a continuous complaint about that, no matter what, and basically they will retaliate in totally different things, like in areas of economy or what have you. As you know, in tourism, or halting, Japanese fishery goods again, etc., etc. That's their typical methodology, and they will not back down. But Japan obviously cannot back down as well, because it's our security measure. It's a core security measure. So basically, the only thing that could happen is for time to cool things down, or the third party, mitigator to come in between, which in often cases is the United States. But at this point, I think the trust and the position of the United States as being the leader of the free world has basically degenerated big time. So I think, in my opinion, it's not something that both parties can make a proactive stance, but moreover, take time to cool things down at first. I think this is what we need to do the most as far as Japan-China relationships is concerned.
Well, it definitely sounds like a standoff, just because we know that the US president will be visiting China in the next month or so in regards to trade and a number of bilateral deals. Do you think he might also extend that visit to Japan and speak to Takaichi about foreign policy there?
That's a big possibility, because they're getting along very, very well. And at the end of the day, I would say the barrier of the free world from aggression from China that we're constantly getting is in this region is Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and the United States. And let's not forget, at the end of the day, it is the United States that is basically protecting this area. So obviously, there needs to be a stronger coalition that needs to be created, reaffirmation about, the threat that is being posed in this area. And I think that is something that needs to be done at a very frequent, regular basis.
Well, thank you, Professor Takashita. That's been very informative today. Thank you for the insights.
Thank you.
Now, staying with the United States, who is stepping up its efforts in military presence in the Middle East, announcing new exercises as tensions with Iran continue to rise. Washington says the move is aimed at deterrence, while some regional allies are urging caution. Here's the report.
The United States has announced new multi-day military exercises in the Middle East as it deploys a major naval force to the region amid escalating tensions with Iran. US Central Command says the drills are intended to demonstrate Washington's ability to project air power across the region. No details on the timing or location have been released. The announcement comes as CENTCOM confirms the arrival of a US carrier strike group led by the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. The United States has also moved F-15E fighter jets to the region, while the United Kingdom has deployed Typhoon aircraft in what it describes as a defensive role. US President Donald Trump said Washington has positioned a large armada near Iran as a deterrent, while stressing that the United States remains open to dialogue.
And by the way, there's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
US officials say the carrier deployment reflects a defensive posture aimed at deterrence and regional stability. Iranian leaders have condemned the carrier's presence as destabilizing, with state media stressing national sovereignty and defensive preparedness. The military build-up follows months of unrest in Iran linked to economic pressure and mass protests. Human rights groups estimate thousands have been killed, though exact figures remain difficult to verify due to censorship and internet restrictions. Some US allies have voiced concern, with the United Arab Emirates saying it will not allow its territory or airspace to be used for any attack on Iran, stressing neutrality and regional stability.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to hold talks with Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa in Moscow today. This marks al-Shara's second visit to the Russian capital following his previous trip in October. The upcoming talks are expected to continue discussions on bilateral relations, defense cooperation and the ongoing restructuring of the Syrian state, further solidifying the long-standing partnership between the two countries. Donald Trump has warned that the United States would stop supporting Iraq if former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki returns to power. In a post on social media, Trump said Iraq had fallen into chaos and poverty during Maliki's previous time in office and warned that Washington would withdraw its support if he is reappointed. The warning comes as Iraq's Shiite political alliance, the Coordination Framework, named Maliki as its nominee for Prime Minister. Maliki has previously served 2 terms from 2006 to 2014, a period marked by sectarian violence and strained relations with the United States. Azerbaijan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ceyhun Bayramov, is visiting China as part of official diplomatic engagements. Bayramov will meet Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi later today. The visit comes at a time when Euro-Asian connectivity, trade diversification and strategic dialogue are moving to the forefront of regional diplomacy, with Azerbaijan playing an increasingly visible and constructive role. Let's take a short break. When I return, I'll bring you more updates on today's global top stories. Welcome back to Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. Now, Europe has reached a milestone in electric vehicle sales with fully electrical models outselling petrol-only cars for the first time. However, when hybrids are included, internal combustion engines still dominate overall sales, while registrations are rising, ensuring sufficient charging infrastructure and maintaining the competitiveness of European automakers remain key challenges. Here's more from our correspondent.
Welcome to this day in Europe, where the bloc sees fully electric vehicles outselling petrol-only cars for the very first time. It's a symbolic milestone in the continent's transition from fossil fuels, but it's important to note that many petrol models are now registered as mild hybrids. That means internal combustion engines still dominate overall sales when hybrids are included. The rise in EV registrations underscores progress, but it also highlights a critical challenge: getting enough charging infrastructure in place to support the growing fleet. There are more than 500,000 public charging points across the EU, but studies show the bloc needs to install hundreds of thousands more each year to reach the European Commission's target of 3.5 million chargers by 2030. That's a pace that current growth rates have yet to match. Meanwhile, utilities and grid operators are planning upgrades to handle surges in charging demand and prevent congestion on local networks. That infrastructure gap matters. Without enough chargers, especially high-speed stations along main corridors, EV owners face longer waits and range anxiety, particularly outside major cities. Countries like the Netherlands, which already has one of Europe's most extensive networks, are already warning that even faster expansion is necessary to keep pace with adoption. Europe's EV boom also intersects with heightened global competition. According to the European Alternative Fuels Observatory, Volkswagen reported record EV registration growth last year, a sign that European automakers are fighting to hold ground. At the same time, Chinese brands such as BYD continue to gain share in European markets, putting more pressure on legacy manufacturers and sharpening debates about industrial strategy, supply chains, and technological leadership. For policymakers, the message is very clear. Increasing EV sales is only one part of the transition. Europe must also build the infrastructure and competitive industrial base to sustain that growth while navigating a rapidly evolving global market. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Now, when traveling either for a holiday or for business, you make sure you have some of the key things that you need: your passport, your suitcase, an extra socks or a blanket, and a bit of money. But for some, their anxiety goes through the roof, especially when flying, even if you're a regular. And that's why these pooches come into play. At Felipe Ángeles International Airport in Mexico, they have introduced a team of support dogs, including this French bulldog named Mammoet, which you just saw, and well as this lovely fluffy dog too. It's to help passengers suffering with stress or anxiety when traveling. And it's just not Mammoet, but a group of dogs to help flyers. After its launch in November last year, the canines work for 90 minutes and then take a rest. Some passengers have approached them after long flights, while others stop simply out of curiosity to have a bit of a pet and a stroke. As you can see there are a number of passengers enjoying the young pooches as they go through the airport. I know for me, I've recently come back from a holiday abroad, and I would have loved to see a dog to stroke and to calm me down from a very long haul flight. So this is quite a good idea, I think. Thank you for watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. I'll be back tomorrow to take you through the latest updates throughout the morning. Take care.